Imagine for just a moment that everything you have ever known is about to disappear. Your home, your family, your possessions, even your own name, as most people know it. Before the sun has risen, while the rest of medieval England still sleeps beneath heavy blankets and thatched roofs, you stand alone on a narrow dirt path. Cold mist curls around your boots, tiny drops of dew cling to the grass, and your breath hangs in the air like pale smoke. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls one last time before surrendering the night to morning. Ahead of you rises a monastery unlike anything you have ever seen. Its towering stone walls have stood here for generations. Countless winters have covered them with frost. Endless summers have warmed the weathered limestone. Kings have ruled and died, while these walls remained almost unchanged, quietly watching history pass beyond their gates. The monastery seems less like a building and more.
Have you ever wondered what life was really like behind the high stone walls of a medieval monastery? Why would someone willingly leave behind family, comfort, and even their own name to live a life ruled by silence, prayer, and discipline? Tonight, rather than hearing legends or myths, we'll quietly step inside a 13th century monastery and experience one ordinary day exactly as a monk might have lived it. As the world beyond these walls remains asleep, the first bell of the morning begins to ring through the darkness. The sound rolls gently across damp fields and sleeping villages before reaching the heavy oak gate that guards the monastery entrance. The countryside is still wrapped in darkness, with only the faintest hint of blue beginning to soften the eastern horizon. A cool breeze carries the scent of wet grass, fresh earth, and smoke from distant cottages. Standing before the gate is a young man who has traveled for days to reach this place. Everything he owns fits inside a simple cloth bundle resting against his shoulder. There are no expensive clothes, no family treasures, and no signs of wealth. Those things belong to the life he has chosen to leave behind. The monastery itself rises from the morning mist like a small stone village enclosed behind thick walls. Built from pale limestone, its buildings have stood for generations against storms, harsh winters, and uncertain times. Narrow windows glow softly with candlelight, hinting that life inside has already begun long before sunrise. After a few No one greets the newcomer with excitement. Instead, an elderly monk dressed in a dark woolen habit simply nods and motions for him to enter. Words are few here. Silence is not emptiness, it is considered a companion, making space for reflection instead of constant conversation. As the heavy gate closes behind him, the sounds of the outside world seem to disappear almost completely. The barking of distant dogs, the calls of early farmers, and the ordinary noise of village life fade into the background. Within these walls, another rhythm governs every hour of the day. The novice follows the elderly monk along a stone pathway polished smooth by countless footsteps over the centuries. Small gardens rest neatly beside the walk, even in the dim morning light. Beds of sage, rosemary, mint, and lavender wait quietly for the coming sunrise. These herbs are more than pleasant plants. They will later be used in medicines, cooking. Ahead stands the church, the heart of the entire community. Its tall bell tower reaches into the fading darkness, while rows of simple arches surround a peaceful central courtyard known as the cloister. Every path seems to lead back towards this sacred space, reminding everyone who lives here that prayer shapes every part of the day. The young visitor notices something unusual. Although dozens of monks are already awake, almost nobody speaks. Two brothers pass each other carrying wooden buckets and exchange only a gentle bow. Another carefully lights candles along a stone corridor without making a sound.
Even their footsteps seem measured and unhurried. For someone arriving from a busy medieval town, where markets echoed with shouting merchants and crowded streets, the elderly monk finally pauses beside a long wooden bench. With a gentle gesture, he indicates that the newcomer should leave behind the last possessions he carried from his former life. In time, even his clothing will be replaced by the plain habit worn by every other brother. Expensive fabrics, colorful garments, and signs of status have no place here. Inside these walls, wealth cannot make one monk greater than another. The novice looks around once more, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Fear and curiosity exist together in equal measure. He knows the life ahead will not be easy. The days will begin before dawn. Meals will be simple. Work will be constant. Yet many who came here believed they were searching for something far more valuable than comfort. Not riches, not power, but peace. Far above them the bell rings once again. This time every monk immediately changes direction. Quiet figures emerge from workshops, gardens, and narrow passageways, all walking steadily towards the church. No orders are shouted, no one rushes. Years of shared routine have taught each brother exactly where he should be when the bell calls. The novice instinctively falls into line behind them. The great wooden doors of the church slowly swing inward, allowing warm candlelight. Without realizing it, he has already taken the first steps into a completely different way of life. And as he crosses the threshold into the dimly lit church, where voices will soon rise together in the first prayers before sunrise, the long day inside the secret world of medieval monks quietly begins. The church doors close with a soft, heavy thud, shutting out the cool morning air. Inside, the monastery is illuminated only by dozens of flickering beeswax candles. Their gentle light dances across ancient stone pillars, creating long shadows that sway almost imperceptibly. The young novice pauses for a moment, allowing his eyes to adjust to the darkness. The church feels enormous compared to the humble village chapel where he grew up. Its high vaulted ceiling disappears into the gloom, while polished stone floors reflect the warm glow of the candles. Every sound seems to linger here, carried gently through the vast space before fading into silence. Without needing instructions, each monk quietly walks towards his familiar place. There are no assigned seats marked with names, yet years of routine have made every movement almost effortless. The brothers line up in two facing rows within the choir stalls, simple wooden seats that have supported generations. The novice stands near the end of the row, carefully watching the others. He notices how naturally they bow their heads, fold their hands, and wait in complete stillness. No one fidgets, no one whispers. Even the youngest monks seem perfectly accustomed to this peaceful rhythm. Then, from somewhere near the front of the church, a single voice begins to sing. It is quiet at first, almost like a gentle breath floating through the darkness. Within seconds, another voice joins, then another. Soon the entire church is filled with. There are no musical instruments, no drums, no bells accompanying the melody, only human voices rising and falling together in simple harmony. The sound fills every corner of the stone building, echoing softly before returning like distant waves upon a quiet shore. For medieval monks, these chants were far more than beautiful music. They were prayers carried by the human voice alone, repeated every day, year after year, century after century. Most of the words came from the Psalms, passages that many monks knew entirely by memory after years of daily repetition. The novice cannot yet follow every verse, but he listens carefully, allowing that calm rhythm to settle his anxious thoughts. Outside these walls, kingdoms rise and fall, wars begin without warning, and harvests succeed or fail. Inside this church, however, the day always... When the final note slowly fades into silence, no one immediately moves. Several long moments pass without a single word. The silence itself seems meaningful. In medieval monasteries, silence was never simply the absence of sound. It was considered another form of prayer, giving each monk time to examine his thoughts without distraction. A quiet mind, they believed, allowed a person to hear wisdom that might otherwise be drowned out by constant conversation. The novice lowers his eyes. He begins to notice small details he had overlooked before. The faint scent of melting beeswax, the coolness of the stone beneath his sandals, the soft rustle of woolen robes whenever someone shifts their weight. Nothing here feels hurried. Time itself seems to move differently within these walls. As dawn slowly approaches, one of the older monks opens a beautifully handwritten manuscript resting upon a carved wooden stand. Every page has been copied by hand, its dark letters carefully arranged in perfect lines, decorated with delicate red and blue designs painted by monks many years earlier. Books like this are precious beyond measure. Long before printing presses existed, every volume required months, sometimes years of patient labor. Each page represented countless hours of careful writing, steady hands, and unwavering concentration. The reader begins to... Most of the novice's education has prepared him to understand these sacred words, yet he realizes that true learning here will extend far beyond reading. Every hour of the day, every task, every prayer, and every moment of quiet observation is meant to teach something about discipline, humility, and patience. Gradually, a faint silver light appears through the narrow eastern windows. The darkness begins to retreat. Outside, birds greet the coming morning with their own gentle songs. The monastery gardens, hidden beneath mist only an hour earlier, slowly reveal neat pathways, vegetable plots, and rows of carefully tended herbs. The brothers rise together. Once again, no commands are spoken. Some quietly collect wooden buckets before heading towards the well. Others prepare to enter the gardens while the morning air remains cool. A few make their way towards workshops where another day's labor already awaits. The novice follows them into the cloister, where the first rays of sunlight touch the ancient stone arches. His first prayers are now behind him. His first real day as a monk is only just beginning, and before long he will discover that within these peaceful walls, The first pale sunlight slips quietly across the cloister, turning the damp stone floor a gentle shade of gold. The cool air still carries the freshness of the night, but the monastery has already settled into another part of its familiar rhythm. The hours of prayer have ended for now, and without fanfare, the day's work begins. The young novice notices something that surprises him almost immediately. No one appears to decide what needs to be done. There are no shouted instructions, no lists pinned to the walls, and no overseer hurrying everyone from one task to another. Each monk simply walks towards his responsibility, as naturally as birds return to the same tree every evening. Years of routine have transformed ordinary... The novice follows an older brother through a narrow stone passage that opens into the monastery gardens. Beyond the carefully tended flower beds lies a much larger world of cultivated fields. Rows of onions, beans, cabbages, leeks, and peas stretch neatly across the rich soil. Every plant has its place, and every season brings different work. The monastery must provide much of its own food. Although nearby villages sometimes offer gifts of grain or vegetables, the brothers cannot depend entirely upon outside generosity. Long winters, failed harvests, or distant wars could interrupt supplies without warning. Growing their own crops is not simply practical, it is essential. The novice is handed a simple wooden hoe. Its handle is smooth from decades of use by countless hands. Only the soft scrape of metal against soil, distant bird song, and the occasional rustle of leaves break the morning silence. The monks bend patiently over the earth, removing weeds one by one without complaint. No task is considered too small. Even pulling weeds is believed to strengthen humility. In medieval monasteries, physical labor was never viewed as a punishment. It was considered an important balance to prayer and study. A healthy body, disciplined through honest work, helped create a focused and peaceful mind. As the morning continues, the novice notices that not every monk works in the fields. Some disappear into orchards where apple and pear trees grow in carefully ordered rows. Others carry baskets towards vegetable stores. A few disappear inside workshops where entirely different kinds of labor await. Curiosity follows him as he is invited into one of these stone buildings. The room is
Copper kettles rest above small fires, filling the air with the comforting scents of herbs and honey. Bundles of dried lavender hang from wooden beams beside bunches of thyme, sage, fennel, and mint, collected during previous seasons. This is the monastery's apothecary. While medieval medicine remained limited by modern standards, monasteries often possessed some of the best medical knowledge available in Europe. Generations of monks carefully copied ancient texts describing plants and their healing properties, preserving information that might otherwise have disappeared forever. An elderly monk gently crushes dried herbs using a heavy stone mortar. Another carefully measures ingredients into small clay jars. There is no rush. Every movement is steady, precise. Travelers, pilgrims, and nearby villagers often come seeking help here. The monastery cannot cure every illness, but simple remedies for wounds, fevers, stomach troubles, and infections sometimes bring genuine relief. The novice watches with quiet fascination before continuing deeper into the monastery. Soon he reaches perhaps its most treasured room of all, the scriptorium. Unlike the warmth of the apothecary, this chamber is filled with cool daylight, pouring through tall, narrow windows. Long wooden desks stand in neat rows. At each one sits a monk, completely absorbed in his work. The silence here feels even deeper than inside the church. The only sounds are the gentle scratching of quill pens against parchment and the occasional turning of a carefully handled page. The novice has never seen so many books gathered in one place. Each manuscript.
There are no printing presses. Every single letter is copied by hand. A moment of carelessness could ruin weeks of painstaking work. One monk slowly traces elegant black letters across a fresh sheet of parchment. Another adds delicate red and blue decorations curling around the edges of the page. Nearby, an experienced illuminator carefully applies thin flakes of shimmering gold leaf that catch the morning light whenever he moves. These books are far more than religious texts. Some preserve the writings of Roman philosophers. Others contain works on astronomy, mathematics, history, farming, medicine, and grammar. Without realizing it, the novice is standing inside one of medieval Europe's greatest centers of knowledge. Outside the monastery walls, many people will never own a single book during their entire lives. Here, entire libraries are protected with extraordinary care. Every copied page becomes a bridge connecting the wisdom of the ancient.
One elderly scribe briefly lifts his tired eyes from the parchment. He smiles gently at the young newcomer. not with pride, not with importance, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone who knows that even the smallest careful stroke of a quill may outlive the hand that wrote it. Just then, a familiar sound echoes across the monastery once more. The bronze bell. Its slow, steady voice rolls through the gardens, workshops, and library alike. Immediately, quills are set down. Tools are returned to their places. Hands are quietly brushed clean. The morning's labor has come to an end. Another part of the day now calls the brothers together, not for work this time, but for the simple midday meal, where even eating follows tradition.
The sound of the bell lingers in the air long after it has stopped ringing. From every corner of the monastery, the brothers quietly leave their work behind. The gardeners brush the soil from their hands. The scribes gently close their precious manuscripts. The herbalists extinguish their small fires. Without a single spoken command, they all begin walking towards the same destination. The novice follows the line of dark woolen robes through the cloister until they reach a long stone building beside the church. This is the refectory, the monastery's dining hall. The room is surprisingly plain. Long wooden tables stretch from one end of the hall to the other. Simple benches stand neatly beside them. There are no colorful decorations, no expensive silver plates, and no luxurious furniture. The only ornaments are a wooden cross upon the wall and a few narrow windows, allowing soft.
Each monk quietly takes his familiar place. No one rushes towards the food. No one speaks while waiting. The novice notices that everyone remains standing until the abbot offers a brief prayer of gratitude. Only then do the brothers sit together in complete silence. Wooden bowls are placed upon the tables. Today's meal is modest. A thick vegetable pottage made from onions, leeks, beans, and barley fills each bowl with gentle warmth. Beside it rests a coarse loaf of dark rye bread baked earlier that morning. A small piece of cheese is shared between several brothers, while cups are filled with weak ale brewed within the monastery itself. To modernize.
Yet for many ordinary peasants living beyond the monastery walls, such steady meals were far from guaranteed. A failed harvest, harsh weather, or rising food prices could leave entire villages hungry for weeks. Within the monastery, careful planning and disciplined farming often provided a more dependable supply of food throughout the year. The novice reaches for his spoon, but then pauses. From a raised wooden platform at one end of the hall, another monk begins to read aloud. His voice is calm and steady, carrying easily across the silent room. As every brother quietly eats, the reading continues without interruption. Sometimes the words come from the Bible. On other days they may come from the writings of respected Christian scholars or accounts of remarkable men and women whose lives were believed to offer lessons in humility, patience, and faith. Conversation.
Rather, they believe that eating quietly allows both body and mind to receive nourishment together. The novice quickly realizes that every action has its own rhythm. Even breaking a piece of bread is done without haste. No bowls are scraped noisily across the table. No one reaches greedily for extra food. The meal is neither a celebration nor a burden. It is simply another part of the day's quiet order. Not every day, however, brings the same menu. Throughout the year, the monastery follows a calendar of fasting days that shape what can and cannot be eaten. During many seasons, meat from four-legged animals is avoided altogether. Fish often takes its place when available, while vegetables, grains, beans,
These practices are not meant as punishment. The brothers believe that learning moderation helps prevent comfort from becoming more important than purpose. When the final spoonful has been eaten, the bowls are gathered just as quietly as they were placed upon the tables. Another short prayer is offered. Then, almost at once, the monks rise together. The novice expects everyone to return immediately to study or prayer. Instead, he discovers another lesson. Meals leave work behind. Wooden tables must be wiped clean. Bowls must be washed. Bread ovens prepared for tomorrow's baking need fresh wood. Nothing is left for someone else, simply because the task seems ordinary. Several younger monks carry buckets from the well, while others sweep the stone floor with handmade.
He had imagined that entering a monastery meant spending every hour reading ancient books. Instead, he is learning that even the simplest chores are treated with quiet respect. When the dining hall is spotless once again, the brothers step outside into the fresh afternoon air. The sun now hangs high above the monastery roofs. Its light fills the central courtyard, where neatly trimmed grass surrounds a small stone fountain. Birds flutter between the cloister arches, while bees drift lazily among blooming herbs planted for both beauty and medicine. The peaceful routine is interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats beyond the gate. A traveller has arrived. His cloak is dusty from many miles upon the road. Like countless monasteries throughout medieval Europe, this one serves not only its own community, but also strangers in need. Travelers, pilgrims, and the poor often find food, shelter, and kindness within these walls, especially in a world where
The novice watches as two monks greet the weary visitor with quiet courtesy. No payment is requested. No questions are asked before offering water and a simple meal. Hospitality is considered another form of service, as important as tending the gardens or copying books. As the traveller is led toward the guest house, the afternoon breeze carries another familiar sound across the courtyard. The bronze bell begins to ring once more. Its steady voice gently reminds every brother that another hour has arrived. The work of the day is not yet finished. And before evening falls, the novice will discover that the greatest challenges of monastic life. The novice watches as two monks greet the weary visitor with quiet courtesy. No payment is requested. No questions are asked before offering water and a simple meal. Hospitality is considered another form of service, as important as tending the gardens or copying books. As the traveller is led toward the guest house, the afternoon breeze carries another familiar sound across the courtyard. The bronze bell begins to ring once more. Its steady voice gently reminds every brother that another hour has arrived. The work of the day is not yet finished. And before evening falls, the novice will discover that the greatest challenges of monastic life.
The bell's gentle voice fades into the afternoon air, and once again the monastery settles into its familiar rhythm. The traveller is safely welcomed into the guest house, while the brothers quietly return to their responsibilities. From a distance, everything appears calm, almost effortless. But as the novice spends more hours within these ancient walls, he slowly begins to understand something important. The greatest challenges of monastic life are rarely visible. They are carried silently within the heart. As the afternoon stretches on, the novice is assigned to help repair a section of the monastery's wooden fence. Beside him works an elderly monk whose face bears deep lines carved by decades of prayer, labor, and changing seasons. Neither of them speaks. Only the gentle tapping of a wooden mallet breaks the silence.
Yet, after several hours, he notices how easily his own thoughts begin to wander. He remembers his family. He wonders what his friends are doing beyond the monastery walls. He thinks of village festivals, crowded marketplaces, and evenings spent beside a warm fire listening to familiar voices. Until now, he had believed silence would simply mean the absence of noise. Instead, he discovers that silence allows every forgotten memory to return. For many monks, this was one of the hardest lessons to master. The struggle was not against other people, it was against their own restless minds. Medieval spiritual writers often described the human mind as something that required gentle training, much like tending a garden. Left alone, weeds would eventually appear, but with patience and daily care, even the roughest ground could slowly become peaceful. That is why every hour inside the monastery follows a careful order: prayer, work, then prayer once again. Routine is not meant to make life dull, it is meant to steady the mind. As the afternoon continues, the novice notices another detail. No monk owns very much. Inside their sleeping quarters, each brother has only the simplest necessities: a narrow bed filled with straw, a wooden stool, a small chest for clothing, perhaps a few handwritten pages for study, nothing more. The absence of possessions is intentional. Without expensive belongings to protect or admire, the brothers believe their attention can remain focused on what truly matters. Even clothing reflects this simplicity. Every monk wears nearly the same plain woolen habit. There are no bright colors announcing wealth. Whether someone entered the monastery as the son of a wealthy noble or a humble farmer, those differences gradually disappear beneath the same simple robes. The novice begins to understand that life here asks each person to leave behind not only material comforts, but also pride itself. As clouds drift across the afternoon sky, the air grows noticeably cooler. One of the older monks quietly points towards a long stone building near the edge of the monastery. Smoke rises gently from its chimney. Inside, several brothers are preparing supplies for the coming winter. Bundles of dried herbs are carefully tied together. Barrels of grain are inspected. Firewood is stacked neatly against the walls. Every season requires preparation. Unlike modern homes, medieval monasteries cannot simply turn a handle to produce warmth or light. A single harsh winter may last for months. Heavy snowfall can block roads.
Food stores must be carefully protected from dampness, insects, and hungry mice. Nothing can be wasted. The novice helps carry sacks of barley into storage, surprised by how heavy they feel after an entire morning of work. His arms ache, his shoulders grow tired. Yet around him, monks many years older continue working with quiet determination. Their movements are slow but steady, shaped by long experience rather than youthful strength. The afternoon passes peacefully until dark clouds briefly gather overhead. A cold wind sweeps across the courtyard. For a moment, the novice notices several monks glancing toward the monastery walls. Although today's countryside seems calm, memories of uncertain times still linger. Many monasteries have survived periods of war, violent raids, famine, and disease. Some communities rebuilt their churches after fires, others repaired libraries damaged by conflict. Every weathered stone within these walls has witnessed.
Even during peaceful years, illness remains an ever-present companion. Without modern medicine, a simple infection or fever can become dangerous. When one brother becomes sick, the others quietly care for him without hesitation, preparing herbal remedies, changing bedding, and continuing prayers beside his bedside. Life inside the monastery is built upon shared responsibility. No one carries hardship alone. As the clouds slowly drift away, golden sunlight returns to the cloister. The long shadows stretching across the stone paths. His first full day has been filled with prayer, work, learning, silence, and unexpected challenges.
He now understands that peace inside a monastery is not something handed freely to those who enter. It is patiently built, one ordinary hour at another. Just then, the familiar bronze bell rings again, its calm voice echoing across the quiet buildings. The brothers gently set down their tools. The day's labor is almost complete. Together, they begin walking towards the church once more, where the fading light of evening will soon give way to the final prayer.
The familiar bell echoes softly through the monastery one final time, its deep bronze voice rolling across the quiet courtyard before disappearing into the evening sky. The day's work has come to an end. The brothers leave behind their tools exactly where they belong. The gardener rests his spade against a stone wall. The scribe carefully covers his unfinished manuscript. The cook stirs the last pot over the kitchen fire before quietly extinguishing the flames. No one seems eager to finish. No one appears exhausted. Instead, there is a quiet satisfaction.
The novice walks once again towards the church, now bathed in the warm colors of sunset. Golden light streams through the narrow windows, painting long patterns across the ancient stone floor. The candles are lit once more, their gentle flames glowing against walls that have witnessed centuries of faithful routine. The monks gather for vespers, the evening prayer. The chants begin just as they did before sunrise, slow, steady, peaceful. The novice notices how different they sound now. This morning, the voices had seemed mysterious, belonging to strangers living a life he could barely understand. Now, after spending an entire day beside them, the same voices feel strangely familiar. He no longer hears only words. He hears the rhythm of a community that has shared this.
His steady voice fills the hall with gentle reflections, reminding the community that wisdom often grows best in moments of calm rather than noise. When the meal is finished, the bowls are cleaned, the tables wiped, and the last candles in the dining hall are carefully extinguished. Darkness slowly settles over the monastery. The novice follows the others through dimly lit corridors until they reach the dormitory. Unlike modern bedrooms, there are no private chambers for comfort or decoration. Rows of simple wooden beds stand side by side. Each bed holds a straw mattress, a rough wool blanket, and a small pillow stuffed with dried grass. Nothing more. The room is quiet, except for the occasional creak of old.
The rule of Saint Benedict encourages the brothers to prepare both body and mind for another early morning. The novice folds his habit neatly beside his bed before lying down. His muscles ache from unfamiliar work. His hands are rough with fresh blisters. His feet are tired from hours spent walking stone corridors and garden paths. Yet beneath the weariness is something unexpected, a quiet sense of belonging. The monastery has asked much of him in only a single day. It demanded patience instead of haste, silence instead of endless conversation, service instead of personal ambition, and steady routine instead of constant excitement. These lessons are not always easy, but perhaps that was never their purpose. Outside, the countryside grows completely still. Farmhouses in the distance.
The wind moves gently through the monastery orchard. Somewhere beyond the walls, an owl begins its nightly call. Within the library, hundreds of carefully copied manuscripts rest safely upon their shelves, preserving knowledge that might otherwise have vanished forever. In the herb garden, tomorrow's medicines continue growing beneath the moonlight. Inside the church, the final candles slowly burn lower. Everything waits quietly for another dawn. Tomorrow, before the sun rises above the horizon, the same bronze bell will ring once again. The brothers will rise. They will pray.
they will work. They will study. And they will continue a rhythm of life that has endured through centuries of kings, wars.
Thank you for spending this day inside the hidden world of medieval monks. If you enjoyed this peaceful journey through history, you're warmly invited to subscribe and join us again as we explore another forgotten corner of the past. For now, let the quiet echo of the monastery bell fade into the distance, and may your evening be peaceful, your thoughts gentle,